What we're going to do over the next 40 minutes, we'll see. This is live, cash live. We're going to do it wherever we want. But I'm going to talk about your empathic system. Because for one, I think I told you guys this a month ago. I'm doing a masterclass toward the end of July here, and it starts on July 22nd, called the Empathic Soul and the Love Rebel. And I'll be telling you more about that some other time, but my head's in the space of this because I've been developing this course for a while, and it's very relevant because all of us are in this psychic holographic field right now, feeling a lot of different vibes. Everyone's fear, everyone's anxiety, everyone's panic, everybody's frustration and anger. It is all around us. It's like in the field, it's permeating the whole entire psychic field right now. So I think it's important to have a conversation about your empathic system. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the human empathic system. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions just generally around empathy. And a lot of people will sometimes casually throw around the name empath, and I don't think they really understand what they're saying. And so I want to talk a little bit about this territory and map for you some ways that you can handle some of the energetics right now and ground yourself a little bit right now. So what I'm going to do over the next few weeks, by the way, I plan on doing Facebook Lives every Friday through July. So welcome. I'm back. I'm saying welcome back to myself. It is retrograde. Yes, can we just talk about the Mercury retrograde in Cancer? Holy crap. And we've got an eclipse tomorrow, which, by the way, those of you who are wondering, I cover all of the astrology stuff now inside of my premium membership on my website. I don't really do a lot of that in the public anymore because that's, people are paying me now to do that, which is nice. So if you're interested in the astrology stuff, I would just recommend getting on the waiting list for my membership because I don't do a lot of that publicly anymore. I'll do some stuff here and there. But I will tell you, that said, now that we're in this Mercury in Cancer, and the sun is, in Cancer, and we're going through this Cancer stuff on this journey now. It really is about your emotional system, your personal emotional system. So when we talk about your empathic system, we're also talking about your personal emotional system, but your empathic system goes beyond just your personal emotional system. It branches into the emotional systems of your family, the emotional systems of society, the emotional systems of culture. You could actually take a minute and map the world this way, that everything around you has an emotional system. We're such a mental culture, and we have positioned the mind as if it's the most powerful part of our co-creative engine, when that's actually not true. The mind matters, but not the way that we would like it to. And we want it to matter the way we'd like it to because it makes us feel like we have more control in our lives and in what happens to us. But when you think about your emotional system, this is something that has an intelligence beyond the mind. And it just comes online, right? Like if you have an emotional reaction to something, it's not like you sat down and thought, I'm going to emotionally react to this. You just do. You just instinctively and sometimes intuitively emotionally respond to something. So this is a great time for all of us to take a pause and map and evaluate our emotional systems. But to do that adequately, and certainly in terms of an empathic understanding, we have to go bigger than just your personal emotional system. This is where it all lands, for each of us. Our personal emotional system becomes the recipient of all the other emotional systems that we're part of. So that's why everything feels personal. Feels personal is because everything out there hits right here in the end. This is how we register the emotional fields that are around us, is personally. So it definitely is important to understand that way that slots into you. But I'm sure you can relate to this when you're having, if this is you, welcome to the party. Just say it. If you're having lately this feeling of extra anxiety, extra frustration, feeling short triggered, like you just go off on triggers. You feel angry, you feel depressed, you feel heavy, tired, exhausted, fearful, worried, lots of angst. Well, the thing is that a lot of that in your system, initially, you're going to register as if it's yours. It's just what we do because we're starting with the personal. So because we feel things in the personal space, right? It's not like you're feeling over here consciously and you're like, oh, I'm feeling anger over here. It's like, I feel angry. I feel sad. I feel frustrated. I feel anxious. So it's the organic beginning of understanding what's happening with your emotional system is to personalize it. So I want you to take a minute and feel your own emotional system and kind of tune into what's happening with you right now, emotionally. Now, the tendency, and I'm going to tell you this will really mess you up, the tendency that we all lean into and that we're often taught to lean into, even by people well-intentioned, within spirituality and self-help, is to mentalize an emotion as fast as possible. Get it to somewhere where we know why we feel what we do, where it becomes controllable, and we can just think our way out of it. And how is that working for you? Here's the thing. You actually can't do that. You can go through a circuit here of trying and then get to a little bit of moment where you feel like, I thought my way out of my grief. I thought my way out of my anxiety. But it comes right back, and usually comes back even stronger. Am I right? Now, to understand why that happens, you have to understand how your emotional system actually works. And this is crucial to where I want to take you in our time together in this Facebook Live. And that's just to say, it's crucial because you can't begin to get traction in empathic overload, which is an overload of emotional energy that is not yours. You can't get traction in that until you commit to first feeling your feelings, feeling your emotions, and feeling what's going on in your system. If you hop to the head as the default, which, like I said, a lot of us are taught this, I got to make meaning out of this. I want this. I don't want to feel this way. I want this gone. Instead of just saying, you know what? I'm okay with whatever genuine feelings arise and happen in my system. I'm just going to be okay with that. I'm not going to always like that. And you have to differentiate. Liking something is not a prerequisite to acceptance of it. I accept a lot of stuff about my life that I don't like at all. So, acceptance isn't I like it or condone it, or it just means it's in my experience. It's here in the room. I'm feeling it. If it's emotion, I am feeling this right now. It's just what's true. And I'm going to let that be okay. Once again, okay doesn't mean I like it. Okay doesn't mean I condone it. Okay doesn't mean that. It just means I acknowledge it as a true facet of my authentic, genuine, in this case, emotional experience in the here and now. Now, can you go to, if you've been feeling that whole list I mentioned, anxiety, hopelessness, I'm adding that in, fear, angst, worry, pressure, heavy, exhausted, can you just go to meet those feelings and go, I really, truly do not like you, but you are in my experience right now, and Robert told me the practice for now is just be okay with you, so here we go. That's really important to, I think, take on, is I'm just going to let it be okay with myself right now. It doesn't have to be anything other than, you know what, I'm just going to be okay with it. And I think that if you can start with okayness, now we've got traction in a shift. Now we've got traction not only in a shift, we've got traction in understanding what is your emotion personally. You're generating it. It makes sense. It's relative to something going on with you in your life. It's not your neighbor. It's not another country's emotional system. It's not a political party's emotional system. It's yours. If you can get traction in understanding that, now we've got places to go. But until you say, I'm going to be okay with whatever I am feeling, I'm going to worry about where it's from, why it's here later. I always say this, folks, as a mantra: feelings first, meaning later. Feelings first, meaning later. And let me tell you why I say that. Because in all the intuitive readings I've done, part of reading people was mapping their emotional systems. And I could see in people that they were always trying to skip the feelings first and get to the meaning later. And they weren't in the guidance of the feelings. So there was no meaning later. Any meeting later was going to be some explain away the emotion or story about the emotion. It wasn't really in the grit of the emotional instruction the emotion carries. So it's really important, as best as you can, and it's not easy because dark emotions are not fun. But as best as you can to say all emotions get to be here. Every single one of them. I'm going to allow every single emotion be okay. Whether that's I am feeling frustration, I'm pissed off, I feel so heavy with like a depressed lead in my psyche today. I feel maybe you have trouble with joy. I don't know. Some people, we have trouble with all sorts of emotions. But the reality is, if the first step is always going to be, I promise you, if you want traction in a shift, in alchemy, is to say, all right, I have to learn how to just be okay with what I feel. I don't have to like it, but I do have to accept it if I want to shift. Now, I don't have to accept it, but that means I'm going to fight against my experience. I'm going to fight against what my system's actually really doing, and it's going to compound on me. And it does. So sometimes we end up in an empathic overload because we haven't been willing to feel emotions through our system, and they pile up. They pile up. They pile up. And now it truly is a mix of personal emotion and the others out there, emotional systems, funking up into our trunk and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I want to start you from the home base here. And that is to say, when it comes to your personal emotional system, let's just enter it through a question. Can you feel it all? In a way where it all gets to be here. Not in a way you like it all, but in a way where, you know what? I'm going to just take a breath and be okay with this feeling. And then I'm going to turn to this feeling, and then I'm going to begin getting curious about it. And that's when we can start to ask questions like, why do I feel this way? So it's important first, though, to get that down and watch yourself. Watch yourself try to jump into meaning first, feelings later. Watch yourself try to reverse because you feel like I don't like anxiety. It makes me feel out of control. Of course it does. It's an out of control emotion. It feels very awful and like panicky, right? Anxiety is not fun. Worry is not fun. Grief isn't usually fun either. These are not necessarily fun, but life isn't just fun. Guidance isn't just fun. Are you kidding me? So it's important to take a step back. If you're feeling overwhelmed right now, I'm talking to you. And I'm talking from ground zero. And throughout July and into my masterclass, I'm gonna walk you bit by bit through your empathic system. Right now we're in your personal emotional system. The empathic system is a bit bigger. So I want you to just feel with what I'm saying and just take a minute maybe and just check in, take a few breaths with what is actually happening with your emotional system. What do you actually feel? And can it be okay? Are you okay letting that in the room? And if you're not, that's fine. You got to tell the truth. And then the acceptance begins with accepting that you're not okay with your anger, or you're not okay with your anxiety or your fear. Okay. Let's be okay with the fact that you're not okay. We always have to come to okayness. And here's what I would say. If you're jammed up and you're hearing me and you're like, oof, those are really, it just feels so, ugh. I don't know, Hato. I don't know if I can okay that. Okay, because you could be an empathic overwhelm, and that's a lot to okay. Like, I'm going to okay this whole empathic overwhelm right now? Really? I feel you. But trust me. And as I continue to guide you, I know you're going to see the wisdom of what I'm saying. Because we're starting first with your personal emotional system. That is where it's all registering. So, do you know your personal emotional system? Do you know your triggering? Do you know what gets you triggered into your history? Do you know have you done enough shadow work on yourself, emotional shadow work, to understand your personal emotional system? And the way that you actually begin that is by feeling your feelings. Once again, it's always going to come back to, are you willing to feel what you feel? Even if it isn't yours, we're not even to that question yet. Is it yours or not? We can't even get there until you answer to yourself, I am willing to feel what I feel. Or, I'm not. I'm straight up not willing to feel what I feel. Maybe next year. and next year, it'll just haunt you. Don't worry, it'll still be there. So, but here's the thing. When it comes to empathic overwhelm, where I want to take you next, if you don't start with feeling what you feel, you're never going to be able to release the emotional debris that is not yours. It's a real big paradox. That if you don't feel what you really feel, if you just go to your head and go, oh, it's not mine, and just try to sweep it off, I'm guaranteeing you that's not going anywhere. Whatever salt bath, whatever ritual you got, it's not a match for this. To me, people, if you approach it from that point of view, you don't understand your emotional system intuitively yet, or your empathic system either. If you think it's just as simple as a salt bath, think again. Now, there's a point where that's helpful. A salt bath, a ritual, and just really releasing somehow. But it's not helpful until you know if it's yours or not. And you can't know if it's yours or not if you won't feel it. And I'm saying you got to sit around for a week and wallow in it. No. I'm saying you got to meet and greet it and go, anxiety, hi. I'm just going to hang out with you for a few breaths here. There you are. Okay. And then you can start to work your system through what I call soul prayers. You can say, okay, I need to ask my soul. I need to ask my guidance team. Is this mine? And here's how you're going to know if it's yours. So if you're feeling an emotion, an overwhelming emotion, pick one lately that's really been, I want you to really get into the meat and grit of this with me. So pick something, if you haven't already identified something that you're struggling with, it's been it feels like it's been haunting you. It feels maybe like it's just in your field. You cannot get this juju out. Or it kind of seems to keep coming back. It'll fade out and then it comes back and sometimes stronger. And pick something that's really relevant to you emotionally. And I want you to feel into it a little bit and just feel the feeling on its own terms. And then the pivot from here is to ask yourself, is there anything in my life that has happened lately or is happening that would generate this kind of, organically and naturally, generate this kind of emotional response? Is there anything going on? So if you're feeling worried or anxious and you're in a divorce, that makes sense. If you're feeling worried and anxious and we're in a pandemic, that makes sense to me. There's something happening in your life that's going to generate that. If you're feeling grief because someone just died, well, that makes total sense to me. Of course you are. It is a natural, nourishing, organic process to feel grief when we lose people we love. If you're feeling a depression of some kind, a creative depression, there could be in your life something going on in terms of a dark night shift happening that's generating that because you're going to a midnight point for a new dawn to happen. That would make sense to me as well. So you do want to take a minute and track your emotional system and go, what am I feeling that actually makes sense? I feel angry because someone just said something really awful about me, or I just got into a fight with somebody, or I feel angry because I see what's happening politically in my country, or I'm just devastated with what's happening to the world through climate change. Pick your cause. We all probably have something in us right now that just mystically triggers us into emotional states. So I just want to name that as instructive, actually healthy, and not something to medicate away, but rather listen to. It doesn't mean you're chained to these emotions forever. In fact, when you feel them and ask what they want from you, what they want, not what you think they want. When they tell you what the meaning is, then you're set free. So I want you to track that right now in yourself. Start with the personal. And see where you land in yourself with personal and then identifying if what you're feeling personally matches circumstances. Now, if you're drawing correlations and you're realizing, yeah, this does make sense, I do feel anxiety, Okay, that's a great assessment. You're going to want to note that. Now what's going to happen from there is that there's going to be personal work for you to do. That can be a variety of things. So if it's grief you're feeling because you just lost someone or a pet, or you're grieving something else, well, you have to go through the process of grief, and grief has its own timing, its own intelligence, and typically from what I've seen in people, you can't direct it and tell it what to do. It has its own cycle. Are you okay with that? Can you be okay with that? Is my next question. And then hopefully the answer is yes, or I will, surrender and try to be okay with it. And then you let the cycle do what it's going to do. Similarly, if you've got anger issues, anger is so intuitively instructive. Maybe you're angry because someone's been violating your boundaries lately. Maybe you're angry because you've been watching others' boundaries being violated lately and you care about other people. I'm going to say, good for you. I'm glad you're angry. That anger has some instruction for you. Now, that's up to you. That's just the personal work. That's up to you to go, well, what is the instruction? And could I follow it? Could I live that instruction out? Or would I go to my mind and mentalize, and I shouldn't be angry, and I want to be a spiritual person, and spiritual people don't get angry, and I need to think positive, and okay, that's an option. A lot of people take that option. And you know what happens? They miss their calling. They miss their sense of call to action. What do you think a calling does? Call you to sit at home? It calls you to get off your butt and get out there and do something about the things that are discomforting and angering you. So if you feel anger coming on, I'd look to, all right, am I being violated by somebody in some way? Is someone else being violated? And that makes me triggered mystically in a way where I care about other people. And so therefore, I'm a little bit wanting to get into the fight and fight the good fight. Let's just take a boundary violation, for example. What if it is a boundary violation and the instruction of the anger is go set a boundary with that person? And if they don't hold to the boundary, leave the relationship. You up for that? You really going to do that? Now, if you got other archetypes in you or other patterns in you, like a codependent or people pleaser, that's going to be a challenge. But the anger is still telling you the truth. And there's nothing less spiritual about it or all this nonsense. No. All emotions are of value. All of them. So they're all of God. They're all part of your emotional system. All is one. So all of your emotions are part of that one. So do you want to live in that kind of congruence with that? Or maybe you feel maybe you feel guilt. Is it healthy guilt? Did you just harm someone in a way where you need to make an amends and that guilt's telling you that? If you feel anxiety, is there somewhere in your life where you're feeling personally, there are situations that you know you have no power in and you don't know how to be with powerlessness or uncertainty? That's what anxiety is from. An inability to be with uncertainty and powerlessness in a mystical and nourishing way. What do I mean by that? I mean, hey, I can't control a lot of stuff in life, and therefore I have to give it to a greater power. That's all I got. That's all I got. My power is not going to do anything over here, or very little. And when we realize somehow that our power can't go manage a situation, we get anxiety. So all of these, and that anxiety might be pointing you to, hey, you need to tighten up in your spiritual connection with Source here. You've got some illusion that your power alone is all there is. And this is where your spirituality needs to integrate into your psychology and hit the streets of your life so you can calm down and let go where you just really have no power. And know that this isn't the only life. This isn't all there is. You can breathe. You know, the angels, the universe, fate, and destiny have this. Chill out. So, in the midst of, can you see how instructive all these emotions can be? Personally, if you feel what they are. Now, I want to branch beyond them and start to get a little bit further out and move beyond the personal emotional system and start to look at other emotional systems. And then I want to, kind of wrap around and maybe finish with a first look at your empathic system and what empathic systems are. But I'm going to take a little coffee break. How you guys doing? What's going on? So while I have been away, I had a family member die. So that's why you haven't heard from me for quite some time. I was dealing with funerals, and let me just say, I hope none of you have any family members die during COVID, because the things you have to go through now because of COVID-19 with cremation and embalming and being able to view the body, and when you can actually even cremate people, it is really ghastly and it's horrible. It's a horrible thing to have someone pass as it is, and then to have to deal with the COVID-19 protocols around it all right now, and then whether even people can come to the funeral it's a heartbreak right now. So I just want to personally say to anyone who's going through any loss of anyone, I really truly do feel your pain. I just went through the same thing this past month with a family member of mine. So just lots of love to everybody who is maybe facing that kind of challenge right now. And it's awful. But anyway, it's so good to be back. It's really good to be back. So how are you guys doing? I'm looking at all your comments. And by the way, so as we kind of move into this next little section of what I want to chat about, if you have any questions, throw them up here. I will, I'll look at them. I'm actually get ready to throw them up. Don't throw them up yet, because I'll tell you when to throw them up. So I'm actually looking at them in real time so that I don't miss out on them. Okay, I'm gonna take another drink of this. This coffee is so good. Oh my god, I love iced coffee. Who likes them some iced coffee? Come on now. Joshua Butler. God, what's up, dude? I haven't seen you in ages. Like, what's it been? 15 years? Cranky? Oh, can we talk about being cranky? Oh my gosh, you did not want to be my friend yesterday. I was not a nice man. Hey, Katie. Chris Ireland. All right. I think you better listen to the message, Chris. She says this keeps repeating everywhere. All right. I just want to keep drinking the coffee. All right, back to work. So, I want to now pivot to what empathic overload is. Now that I've made a case that, you do want to start with your personal emotional system, and you want to consider what you feel first. First, I would assume, just play with this. I mean, and I'm not making this law, but I would just play with this. First, start from the premise that what you're feeling is yours. Or let's just say it this way. I take that back. Start from the premise that what you're feeling is possibly yours, so that you catch your own shadow. Because the tendency also in this kind of emotional shadow work is really what we're doing here, is to kind of project away, dark emotions as if we don't feel those or they're not ours. It might be. And it could be both and. And that's where we're going to go next. We're going to talk a little bit about the both and. So, when you're feeling emotions, and you know your emotional system fairly well, you know your insecurities, you know your triggers, you know where someone could say something to you and elicit an emotional response like that. And you know exactly the kind of emotion that's going to come from that response. When you start to understand and you've mapped yourself well enough, you get a sense of that, right? You get a sense of what's going to make you angry or feel shame or feel fear or feel triggered into reacting right away or triggered into some kind of action or reaction, right? So you want to know that. You want to know that territory as best as you can. Because then once you start to take responsibility for your emotional volume, you over time start to turn things down in a healthy way. Because, you start, so for example, if someone says something insulting to you, or engineered to disempower you or put you down, once you do some esteem work, soul esteem work, those sorts of comments can't quite take you down and raise a volume level up emotionally in you like they could before. Now, that isn't because you thought yourself into those never affecting you. It's because you did inner activating of esteem in yourself, such that someone taking a shot at you and trying to put you down just doesn't hit the same way, doesn't trigger the same way, doesn't bring the emotional volume up the same way. So in your personal emotional process, this is what emotional shadow work offers, and following emotional instruction offers. Emotions will take us back a lot of times into our history, speaking of Mercury retrograde in Cancer, and bring us to feel through, where we were wounded, where we weren't loved adequately, where we were given messages that we weren't enough. And all of the feelings that brought into our system and all the adaptations and patterns we created to survive that shame-based low esteem model that was being imprinted into our psyches. So once you start to really bring love to those areas and you start to really allow all of it to be okay, because here's the thing, you go back into that part of yourself in your history with you shouldn't feel this way, you should love yourself more. It sounds like perfectionism, because it is. And that doesn't help you love yourself more. When did shaming yourself to love yourself more help you love yourself more? So that's part of why I say acceptance first. Always. It's another way of me saying, love yourself first. And then let your emotions, your emotions and what you feel are not markers of your value. Even the volume they might be coming out of you at or rising up in you in, it's not a marker of your esteem. You're always enough. You are enough. There's nothing you can feel or not feel to not be enough. You're always going to be enough. You've always been enough. It's called soul esteem. It's called you're enough because you're part of the all. Period. So is everybody else, by the way. Once that activates more, and you can't mentalize it into activation. Let me say it this way. This kind of esteem is a force that I would qualify as a grace. And you cannot make grace happen. You can only do the feng shui for it to activate. Your mind cannot make grace happen. Grace comes when you align in yourself. You do some inner movements and realign things, and then it activates. So when you do this inner realigning, which is a lot of hugging dragons and giving love to the parts of you that didn't get it and telling yourself you're enough no matter what, that's alignment. It's alignment to the soul. It's alignment to soul esteem. Then soul esteem activates. And it has to be real. It can't be, produced by the mind. It has to be really like my soul is moving the furniture here. It's not me thinking positively that's doing this. It's me hugging the dragon over in that corner that breathes fire the most, that makes me feel the worst about myself. I'm going to go give it a hug right now. Here we go. It's that. Now, that said, I want you to consider everything I've just talked about sort of like a circumference, if you will, of your personal emotional system. But that's not the only emotional system you're connected to. We're going to branch out next to family. So in your growing up, you were part of a certain emotional system in the family. And I want you to just take a minute and think about that. And to better map that, I want you to consider what role emotionally you played to your family system. What was the role you played to your family? So, some of you might have been the emotional scapegoat. So, you had parents and siblings and people in your family that would never deal with their emotions in direct, honest, shadow work ways. They would project them onto you. They would dump them onto you somehow, whether that was criticism was their method of projection, whether that was ignoring you was their method of projection, whether it was the silent treatment, whether it was physical abuse, whether it was abandonment. You're part of this emotional system called family. And in what I've seen as an intuitive in my readings was that people play a certain role to process for the family psyche the emotions of the family psyche. Now, I'm going to interject something here, and I'm jumping ahead, but I want to highlight this because this is something I'm going to teach about coming up, and I want you guys to come to this. It's going to be a free webcast event. I, in readings, begin to identify, after probably the first 5 years of doing them full-time professionally, that many people are born and they carry in themselves what I call a vibrational kind of frequency emotionally, and I call this the empathic soul. And what that is it's a soul, possibly you, that is wired from the level of soul, not psychology. We're going to get there in a sec. I'm not talking psychology just now. I'm talking your soul and its vibrational frequency and its spectrum of perception and feeling things. There's something called the empathic soul. And if you were an empathic soul born into a family system that allotted you the role of scapegoat, oh boy, we got to talk. Because unlike any other non-empathic soul that would still be receiving a lot of stuff that would, psychologically warp them in a certain way, you are actually absorbing like a sponge far more from the whole emotional psyche of the family into you. Not only the immediate family, but I'm talking the generational energy of the family as well. Because empathic souls take on that kind of spectrum of emotional energy. So just jumping to my masterclass, that's why I want to do this, is because this is not something psychological models are equipped to address. Psychological models, when it comes to human emotional dynamics and family systems, definitely address a lot, but they don't address this territory. And that's why I'm doing a class on it starting July 22nd. But I want you guys to come. If you're wondering, am I an empathic soul? I'm going to do a free webcast event for you to find out. And you can actually sign up for it. I put a link in the description under this video. Click it, sign up, and it's going to be July 19th. It's a little ways away. We're going to keep talking about this stuff week to week anyway. But I want to put that on the radar as something that I'm heading toward. Now, I'm going to jump back in time to this idea of the family system and your emotional system and you playing a role. Now, that in part is just to show you that you are being patterned by family emotionally in some dynamic. And the way that usually ends up codifying is into an archetypal pattern. So for me, growing up in a family of addicts and abandonment and abuse and everything that comes with addict parents, I was the adult child. I was also the abused child. And in some degrees there, I was also the abandoned child. There was a lot going on up in my childhood. I was a lot of kids at one time. But what it all had in common, and I am also someone who I would say is an empathic soul. So I've got that merging in here. And let me just say, there's something, just because you think you're an empath doesn't mean you're an empathic soul. There's a very big difference because the empathic soul has the empathic soul contract. Someone who would self-identify as an empath, that doesn't mean you're an empathic soul. Come to my event. We'll figure it all out. I promise. But you're getting patterned emotionally by your family. And when you move out of the family into the world, come on, you take those patterns with you. And that becomes your emotional way to be in the world. Now, if you are somebody who is an empathic soul, you're going to then, as you mature into your adult psychology, you're going to meet the world in bigger, more public ways, because that's what happens when we're adults usually anyway. But you're also going to feel the world in a bigger and much more public way. Now, let's go to empathic overload. What I'm after here, just thread something, is that a lot of you have wires and systems that allow you to feel more spectrums of emotional data than other people do. So this is where I want to bring the both and of your personal system and the systems out there. Let's just map the systems out there real quick so we have them on the map. You've got, I just named family. There's a family emotional system. But then we move past family of origin anyway, right? And sometimes we create our own families. in terms of biology and marry someone and have children. Some of us create our own families because we choose friends and people that love us to be in our lives. There's many ways we create family, but no matter which way we do it, we end up creating another emotional system. And that's part of our emotional empathic system. Now we've got an emotional system of the public and society, and how that rolls into our system as well. We start to feel with our country, our nation, our city. When 9/11 happened in my country, the emotional system of the whole country began to feel that event. And then some parts of the world felt that event with us in different ways. That's a good example of whenever there's something that hits us, like COVID right now, we're all feeling the event together in a certain way. Now, we're in a time, and this is where you got to really look alive. We're in a time where, while we feel things this big, especially those of you who are empathic souls or highly just empathic, highly sensitive, while we feel things this big, we also have powers that be that seek to infect our emotional systems with psychic viruses, emotional viruses. And that's a lot of what media does now, is it doesn't care what virus they use, psychic, psychological, psychospiritual virus, emotional virus. What they do care is that you keep watching them. Keep watching us. Keep watching our coverage. And there's so many, news sources now that they all try to one-up each other with the best way to trigger your emotional system to gluing your eyes onto them. Now, this matters because this is part of your empathic overwhelm. It matters huge. So while you're out here and life's throwing its stuff around, now, mind you, I'm not negating the healthiness of feeling what's happening in the world. There's a healthy way to do that. And there's a necessity we do that so that we don't collapse into crazy and do ourselves in. We should be feeling the animal kingdom right now as the climate changes and the earth warms. Absolutely, because we're next. You think that last species to go extinct was the end of it? We're next. And we should also, spiritually speaking, probably care about other species, just not just the human species. I want to digress here. My point is, you've got to know what you feel, why, where, and where you're feeling it, and how the psychic field works now, how your empathic system is actually, because of the internet, being rewired in a way you may not even have a clue about, and in a way that maybe already is becoming very burdenous, not useful, toxic, and leaving you going, I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do. What I want you to take from this Friday Facebook Live, because we're going to take this in pieces, and just for now, I want you, we're going to put on the personal emotional practice of feeling feelings first, getting to meaning later. I want you to go back. I want you to feel your feelings and go, what do I feel? And is it mine? Did something happen in my life where this feeling's a match for that event? Okay, maybe. And then if you can find that match, great. But if you ask this question, all this anxiety, all this fear I'm feeling, all this, angst and frustration and anger, did something happen in my life that, makes sense that I feel this way, that I can connect and correlate to? If you get a no, well, then it's probably not yours. It's not yours. Now, the reality, however, having said that, is I think all of us are probably feeling all these, darker emotions because of COVID-19. Personally, we are feeling that. That would be an organic, natural response to a viral pandemic for anybody. And everything that goes with it. The economy being shaky, the political and social fabric getting really activated and animated, a lot of chaos, and so much uncertainty. It's going to shake the best of us. Come on now. And that's okay. Now, let's go to both and. What if that's true? And you say, well, Robert, yeah, I definitely feel all those things, and I can locate in my life why. And then I'd say, okay, normally what, actually right now, and do this right now. We're threading this through right now. I want you to ask yourself if you're feeling, let's say, hopelessness, or if you're feeling apathy, whatever, pick a dark emotion. There's so many. Pick one. And then I want you to ask yourself, what level would you rate that emotion? Is this a 10? You're feeling a 10 of anxiety, meaning high anxiety. 10 is the highest. Or is it like a 2? I'm feeling a little anxiety buzz, but, it kind of makes sense. Life's a little iffy right now. Rate yourself with that emotion. Get a baseline in how you would rate yourself. Ohado, this worry's a level 7. This anger's a level 9, dude. It's actually, one more level up, it's going to rage. So then we start level 1 with rage. And then we got a whole another 10 to go up. Feel you. Do you. Feel you. But seriously, feel yourself. Give yourself a rating. Rate the emotion. Okay, now, obviously some of this is going to become homework before next week. But rate the emotion. Next thing I want you to do is I want you to think, okay, this is actually frustration level 7. Is there something in my life that's frustrating me that would generate a level 7 of frustration? You look around your life and you're like, no. I think what would probably be more on par is level 2 frustration. Why am I feeling a level 7? What I'm after here is you really are feeling your own genuine frustration, maybe perhaps your own genuine anxiety, your own genuine despair, because there's enough dark emotions to go around. But the level you're feeling it at is not matching the events in your life. So, if you're feeling despair level 3, or rather, if you're feeling despair level 10, but your life's only really generating a despair level 2, what's causing that 8 sort of levels to compound on your 2 and make it a 10? It's your empathic system. You're feeling the despair, the anxiety, the fear. You're feeling all of the stuff of the field of life itself. Now, that's important to distinguish, because when you go to your own despair, when you go to your own, just any of your own dark emotions, whatever they might be, you want to do your personal shadow work in the level that is yours. And then the level that isn't, we got to have a different approach. Now, I want to tell you how I map this through readings, because actually this whole concept I just taught you is something that I discovered when I was doing readings. And I discovered it in myself. So if I had a client, I am as flossing as all of you and have my own human variety of issues and insecurities. And especially when I was earlier on in my career doing full-time intuitive readings on people, I was noticed sometimes if I worked with a client that had a very similar issue to something that I know I personally have. And I would do a reading on them and I would spot the issue and I would track it and I'd map it. I'd call them, we'd work it out. I'd give them some guidance. When I would hang up the phone, let's say I had normalized or neutralized that issue of, let's say, some kind of insecurity down to feeling insecure down to a 2. But after I got off the phone with the client, suddenly I was back at level 8, which is where I began before I began my inner work. And I remember thinking once, I'm like, why am I at level 8 again? And then I realized I had taken on their energy. And that's what I do as an intuitive. That's part of how my intuitive system works reading people, is I actually feel into your field. And there's a part of it that's psychic that way and empathic that way. But when you do that, especially if you have a core issue that someone else has a similar core issue to, maybe you've done some inner work and you're like, I'm coasting at level 2 here. but their inner work isn't even in their vocabulary, and they're at level 9. There is a very strong resonant likelihood that by the time you're done interacting with them or being in their field, you will feel yourself bumped up when you thought, oh, I thought I had kind of calmed that down. And next thing you know, it's back at level 8. That is a very real phenomenon. Now, what I want to do next week, I was putting stuff on the map for you, because next week I'm going to give you some tips on, okay, what do you do with that? But what I want you to do for this week is I just want you to track and map yourself. This is the thing, folks. And there's a reason why I'm holding off on giving you the next level of guidance, because this requires some thought and consideration and slowing yourself down. What I'm giving you as homework. It requires that you sit with yourself and you go, I need to come to know my emotional system a little better as an intuitive. I need to come to know it as a co-creator. I need to know whether I am willing to feel all my feelings. And I need to understand that if I don't feel them all and acknowledge them as okay, then I've got a problem. I'm not going to get alchemical traction in shifting the states of these emotions. And things will likely compound, and I'm likely to hook into fields other than my own, the energy that matches this with other people, and it's going to make me feel overloaded. That is empathic overload. It's exactly how it works. Now, there's so much to say about this. That's why I'm doing a masterclass on it in-game, because that's one level of it. There's also the empathic overload that you get into because you have rogue adapted survival patterns in your psyche that get you psychically contaminated again and again because they have no boundary. Like something like the codependent pattern or the addict. Have you ever met an addict with good boundaries that isn't a psychic pig pen? Just everyone's junk all over? No. So you have your own, trust me, don't make me read you. Trust me, you have your own variety of this. Now, let alone if I throw in, you also might be an empathic soul, which changes the whole entire approach and the whole game to what I'm saying. So, what I want you to do, how much time, where are we at? Yeah, we're almost an hour out. What I want you to do before next time is just take this in, listen to this a few times, and just get curious about, I love this approach, curiosity, not judgment. Oh, hell no. You go in curious, you're like, I'm going to just be curious about how my emotional system really works. And start to play with these questions. Is it mine? Is it some other field? Don't assume it's some other field to opt yourself out of doing your own personal shadow work. Do not do that. You'll only screw yourself in the end, trust me. Assume it's possible that what you're feeling is both and. I'm both feeling anxiety that's genuinely mine because life's a bit of a shit show right now. And, oh my God, I'm up to level 10 because of the anxiety of the rest of the world right now coming into my field. You know, I think it's interesting when we all of you who follow me, you know, you're in the intuitive arts. Let's just say that. You are into the multisensory development arts. Are you not? You're seekers. You're mystics. You know, you're alchemists. You're a lot of you are very likely empathic souls. Most of my clients through my career were. Not all of them, but I'd say good 80% of the clients I ever worked with were empathic souls. So that said, you know, you're in this territory of expanding. What does this all mean to become multisensory? It means expanding your bandwidth of being able to receive information, guidance, more. That's what it means. And it demands, multisensory development demands then that you know how to manage extra bandwidth. And that part of that spectrum of bandwidth is this spectrum called empathy. It is an emotional spectrum where you will absorb not only emotion. When we get to empathic soul territory, let me just tell you, just a little primer. You don't just absorb emotional energy and vibration from people. you also absorb thought forms, perceptions, belief systems. I'm telling you, you will have thoughts come into your head that are not even from your own system when you're that open and that capable of bandwidthing out. Now, I've only ever seen empathic souls be able to pull that kind of data. So if you're someone that's, once again, kind of been pulling some of that in, or you think you might be, come to my free live webcast event on July 19th. Sign up. It's right below this video. But there's so much to say about this. So I want to take a minute. Let's take a minute and do some Q&A. If you have any Q&A, I'll go over just a little bit here. So if you have any Q&A, write that to me while I drink my last dose of live coffee, iced coffee. It's starting to become just coffee because the ice is melting. But how are you guys feeling about this material? Can you tell that I'm so excited? I've been doing like download after download about this lately. Yeah, this course that's coming up. Holy mother of God. And look alive, because it's going to be on a huge discount when I first launch it. And then it's only going to be very short on discount for a very short amount of time. Okay. How do you protect yourself from heaviness? Christy Adams. Okay, I'll take that. All right. Okay. Heaviness. I'm going to give some practical stuff to do for now, because it's actually a very big question, Christy. One of the things that you can do is exercise. I think a lot of times what we don't realize is how our body itself becomes an antenna of data, a sponge. So if you're feeling heavy, move. And I'm not saying you got to go do some spin class or something really intense. I'm just saying you need to move. You got to ventilate energy. I think one of the reasons why I was able to really mature a very sharp intuitive skill and sustain doing readings for so long was because I'm athletic. I had a way to process heaviness through my system, or the heaviness of other people through my system. Because doing readings, I would get emotionally kind of contaminated and toxic and full of psychic debris from people. It wasn't anyone's fault. It's just that I didn't know earlier on how to manage my system better. And I didn't even know what was happening. I didn't quite understand technically what was happening to me. So thank the gods I had athletics. I've always had, some way to athletically get engaged. I would say, just quick answers, Christy, move around and breathe. And then there's other things I think that go deeper into, we got to look at why you're heavy. What gets you heavy? So here's the thing. I love this. Thank you, Christy. If you're, how do I want to say this? If you're looking at this question, all of you, how do I handle or manage, fill in your blanks, the anxiety that I keep seeming to get in my system, that heaviness, I feel overwhelmed by fear. I feel overwhelmed by worry. And, you're doing some of my exercises here and you're realizing I don't think it's fully mine. And even if it is yours, what I got to ask you is this question. This is a question I'll end on. I might take another question, but this is something, I don't know. We'll see if I end on this. Who knows? What I want you to do is consider, how do I, so the question always, you see all these people, okay, let me say this way. I've got 5 different ways of saying this going through my head. A lot of times people get into, for example, the psychic hygiene of Epsom salt baths and floral essences and aromatherapy. I think I'm naming a lot of my routine. And stones and incense and all these things to keep their field clear. Now, and I do love that stuff, and it has its place in psychic hygiene. However, the bigger issue is always going to be for all of you when it comes to your empathic overload, contamination, psychic viral load, whatever, is how do you get yourself contaminated in the first place? Do you know the patterns that get you funked up? Because you're not contaminated out of nowhere. So, for example, if you wonder why you continually feel drained by narcissists, I'm going to have to look at you and say, well, my dear blood donor, We need to ask why you keep inviting vampires in. Know the pattern. Narcissists only come into your life. Vampires can only come in if you invite them. Why do you keep inviting them in? So rather than hanging garlic and a cross on the door, which is the same as using sage and smudge to get rid of bad juju, that you're just going to invite in, we got to know why you invited in. And until we know why you invited in, your sage, your smudge, your crosses and garlic are going to do nothing. They're the caboose of psychic hygiene. So, another layer. Thank you, Christy. You got to know, all right, how do I get myself contaminated? How do I get myself dirty? How do I invite in? And here's the thing. We're going in the back door. This is probably not conscious in you. Or not conscious very, very much. So you got to know, rather, how do I get clean? How about this? How do you get dirty? Let's start with that question. How do you get heavy? How do you, there's a lot in here, as you can tell. That's why it needs a masterclass. But, okay, any other questions? Yeah, so, I'm a fan of Reiki. I'm a fan of, if you saw all the stones I collect, I love, geodes and stuff. But I'm telling you, that's no match for a codependent pattern. That's no match for a blood donor pattern. That's no match for an addict pattern. Those patterns will get you psychically screwed and emotionally, empathically overloaded. Your crystal ain't doing nothing other than making you feel a little better. You got to go to the core way that your system is driving things in such a way through choice, perception, patterns, and relationship, and getting you contaminated and empathically overloaded and overwhelmed. So if you're an empathic soul, this is the thing. It requires a completely different understanding and approach to how you do manage your patterns, the patterns you need. So that's why in my course, it's the empathic soul and the love rebel. Because you're going to need a rebellious force in you, in this culture and the patterns of this culture, to pull off what the empathic soul contract asks of you. Can't wait to teach that masterclass. Okay, anything else? Yeah, nature's good. I like nature too, by the way, just those sort of things. Okay. Any other things, y'all? Psychic pig. Yes. Don't you just love my little metaphors? All right. So I'm not seeing any questions. I'm going to let you all go, but I will see you here next Friday and we'll keep it going. And also make sure you sign up for the free event that's coming up on the 19th, and just stay alert and aware that there's a masterclass coming. Big discount right away, just for like 4 or 5 days though. So just make sure I'm doing a COVID discount on it when we launch it. All right. It's great to be back, everybody. And keep your comments coming. I will read through them later and just see, if you have any questions, go ahead and write them down too. It will maybe help me for what I want to do next week when I do my next live. So if you have any other questions, or things that hit you as you watch this and you think, well, I want to ask that question. I will go ahead and schedule the next live, and you can put it up under there, or you can put it up under this one, and I'll make sure that gets scheduled in the next couple of days so that there's a place to start putting questions. But it's so great to be with all of you again, and I've really missed being in the mix. It's nice to be back. So, so much love to you all. I'll see you guys next time, and next Friday, 6 p.m. Mountain Daylight Savings Time, so that's 5 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Pacific, and then 8 p.m. Eastern. And obviously you can watch it on demand whenever it's all over. So you guys are awesome. I'm seeing all your comments. And I will go through those next time. But I'm sure that's enough to think about for now. All right. Take care, everybody. And make sure you're on my newsletter too. That's a great way to stay informed on everything that's going to be going on over the next couple months. And just sit with my questions until I see you on the next live. Take care.